In the Know, a radio program talking to the newsmakers in Ogle, Lee, DeKalb counties and beyond, keeping you in the know. Here's your host, Charles Van Horn.
Good morning. Another Sunday edition of In the Know. I'm Charles Van Horn. Joining me in studio, Rochelle Mayor John Bearrows. Good morning.
Good morning. How you doing today?
Doing great. Wet weather for most of the week. Grass is starting to grow. When will the city go out and start knocking on doors, telling people they got to whack that stuff down?
It's already happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So
that what the community resource officers go out and do that? And
they are now. Wendy Horn is, is our code enforcement, and now that position is going to be moved over to the resource officers, so they'll be the ones that give the citations and such. And we don't like to have to do that,
yeah.
But it is our code. You got to keep out of respect for your neighbors, and you got to keep your lawn.
It is funny because I see these organizations that always post things online saying, don't mow in May, save it for the butterflies. And I'm like, I don't know if you're aware of how fast grass grows, but you clearly must live in the desert, because here in the upper Midwest, it's going to go to seed. You'll be out there baling your lawn sooner than later. Speaking of water and the rain and everything else, water issues in Rochelle, knock on wood. Rochelle's been pretty consistent with keeping their water supply going. A lot of infrastructure in town has been replaced over the years, of course. I would be remiss if I don't mention the exterior of the water tower debate. Thankfully, that was settled after much ulcers were given.
Yes.
But let's talk about some of the city wells. Now, you have more than one. Rochelle runs on a number of different wells.
Yeah, well 8, which is the one that we left for bids last night and the council voted on. We had that, if you remember back about a month ago, we had let for bids, and we had a mistake in the bids, so we had to rebid the project. But that's a big project. Adam has done a great job with not only the iron out, but the radium removal plants that we put in up at the high school water tower and such down on Southview. And one of the things that he does really well is he searches out these grants which have debt forgiveness. You might borrow $6 million, for example, to do a project, and maybe $2.5 million of it is forgiven, through the grant. So, he does a great job, and you've got to keep up with your infrastructure. Otherwise, it just all of a sudden, if you can't afford to do that little bit now, how are you going to do all of it in 3 to 5 years?
Now, well 8 has been sort of sitting in reserve for a while, right?
That's the one that's Karen Road and Wisgold Drive. And
it's got some iron problems causing rust on things, which for your average residential homeowner in the country, rust is a way of life without a water softener. So it doesn't bother, the farm families. They're fully aware of rust. But when you have state-of-the-art technology companies in the area, they don't want to deal with that hard of water.
Yeah, the iron out is a real critical issue. And like I say, we've been working on all of our wells to get them all up to date, have the radium removals plants put in if they need that. And it's not a matter of if you're going to need it, it's when it shows up in the well. And with the radium, the odd thing is the more water you pull from that well, the more chance you have of the radium showing up. If you Adam had done a test a while back, and he found that when he reduced the speed of the pump and drew the water out of the well a little slower, you didn't get the radium like you did when you really put the pump at full speed, which is kind of interesting.
Must mean it falls back down the pipe? I don't know how that works. How deep are some of the wells around here? Do you know what?
I would have no idea. That'd be an Adam question. I'd only guess. I'm guessing if I were going to take a wild guess, I would say they're probably 400 to 800 feet deep, I would guess.
And none of the old school shallow wells. You find these farm families out there, 40-foot wells.
Back in the day when they used to drive a point.
Yeah, dig them by hand. Mayor John Bearrows in studio with us, joining us, talking about Rochelle and, of course, water and infrastructure. We always love talking about infrastructure because there's one thing that Rochelle does is stays ahead of the curve in fixing things. And we've reached summer in Illinois. We'll be here before you know it, which, of course, means orange cone season. A lot of road work's already done. Some streets down to one lane here and there. Some streets shut for a little bit. Big paving projects. How hard are the crews working, and what kind of summer do you think they have in store for them?
Well, they've got a pretty full docket, as we start looking at the budget for this summer, the summer of 2024. This starts way back last summer and last fall on planning for these projects, getting bids, and securing the dates that you're going to start the project. So they plan ahead, and I think that was the interesting thing we saw through the pandemic. A lot of communities had people laid off. We didn't have that because we had projects planned ahead that we kept our crews busy during the pandemic. So that was a real important issue. To me, you have employees, and our job is to make sure that we can keep things moving and keep all the employees on staffs. Sending them home and saying, well, we have to lay you off for a couple of months doesn't do anybody any good.
The roads still have to exist.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
A lot of big road projects going to be happening. Looks like the big, Creston Road and Karen Road, getting that rebuilt. Sam had mentioned that it had been there for 24 years now. It looks sort of in great shape if you're in just a small four-wheeler like a car. But if you're in a tractor-trailer, I guess it rides a little different.
Yeah, it's been needed. And like I say, that's one of the things we look at is just try to piecemeal it so you can get so much of it done that you can afford, and you just try to stay ahead of that and keep up with everything because it does wear out. The roads do wear out. There's a lot of weight. You take 80,000-pound plus semis rolling down there, and when they come up to a stop, you have an exponential amount of pressure put on those front and tractor tires. That weight's coming forward. That's why a lot of times you see a washboard at a stop sign because all that weight's from the trucks.
Have you ever done a survey or a count to know how many tractor trailers enter and exit Rochelle properly each day? Because I can only imagine it might be in the hundreds.
Oh, I'm sure it's all of that. Yeah, because we've got all the frozen food and the commercial industrial area to the south. All those semis now. Some of them come through town. Some of them go up Karen Road. And hopefully down the road, so to speak, hopefully we're going to be looking at, we just applied for a grant for the DeMint Road extension. If we get that grant, there's going to be a lot of work to put that project together, but that would take DeMint Road straight into the frozen food commercial area on West Gold Drive. It would also give a straight shot into Lake Sewell, which if you're not from here, most people don't know how to get to Lake Sewell.
Yeah. So
this would be a straight shot to take them right to the entrance of Lake Sewell. It would keep that truck traffic more out of the town other than your local deliveries. They would be able to access and go right out to 38 and get on 39 to go north or south, or go down to 88 and head east or west.
And open up areas for economic development, too, because if you already have truck grade roads there, obviously it becomes more enticing for industry or places that will use a lot of trucks to be located near that.
One of the other ancillary benefits of doing this DeMint Road project is DeMint Road would somewhat act as a dam. And a lot of the property, if you look at a map from DeMint Road looking west, a lot of that is all floodplain. So we can kind of control it with this DeMint Road extension. One of the parts of it is to get the dirt to build the road. We could potentially look at making Lake Sewell bigger and take that dirt to build the road. Retention, detention areas benefit the floodplain, and ultimately it would help benefit the flooding throughout the city.
I propose a second lake named Lake Bearrows. That would be my proposition right there. See?
No, I think I'm good.
You think you're good? All right, well then, Lake Van Horn then. How about that? Rochelle Mayor John Bearrows in the studio with us. Lots of high praise delivered this past week at the Rochelle City Council meeting. First off, you honored some folks who work hard, the clerk's office and all the people involved there. And then Chief Pavia, he honored officers for various achievements, and also Telecommunicator of the Year. Again, unsung heroes in there. Telecommunicators are just amazing as to what they do, what they deal with, and those emergencies. How great is it that you have so many fine people in law enforcement and in telecommunications in the city?
Well, and last night was a good example. A while back we had a drill or a test for a mock disaster, so to speak, and my job and city manager's job were that we were going to be in City Hall when this happened, and so you were supposed to act like you normally would, and so we were in City Hall, and when they came, they called us and said, "There's a mock disaster, or there's a disaster." It was I don't remember what the situation was. I believe it was an active shooter that you train for this stuff constantly. So I got up and I wanted to go in the radio room to watch from everything unfold from there, because we have the cameras in the radio room,
Yeah.
the police department for the high school. So I went in there and watched that, and it just absolutely blew me away how those telecommunicators and dispatchers are the eyes and ears for those officers on the ground as they negotiated them through the school, because they could see the cameras around the corners.
Yeah.
It was very, very impacting to me. I never realized how critical that piece of the puzzle was. And then ultimately last night, we had the life-saving awards for Allie that had the event at the high school. Officer Jim, our RSO officer at the high school, received that award. He was first there with the CPR. Extremely lucky gal, and we are so blessed to be able to not only have, but be able to afford our RSO officers. Everybody looks at, they think you're putting the RSO officer in there because you want to control things, and, that's really not always the case. And this was the best example of, thank God he was there.
And it's so emotional too. You could tell that she was trying to hold it together, and he was trying to hold it together, and then they just gave up. And it was just great to see. And I tell you how great of an outcome that was. It could have been far more devastating. But yeah, the power of the RSO program, you had somebody there to at least take those first steps. Now, it's not saying that, schools don't have people who can step up and do things, but what an advantage.
And he happened to be right there.
Yeah.
And, that's the thing that we are just, I don't know. And I can't even imagine. I watched Allie come up last night as she came up to talk and to hand a thank you note to him. And I couldn't even imagine what she was feeling at that moment. I mean, because of them, she's here.
Yeah.
And, and I think it's important to note, too, that you had several steps in this whole event. It began with Officer Jim at the school. It continued on through our first responders that responded to the call from the fire department.
Yeah.
It extends on to our local hospital. When she got there, they prepped her and stabilized her as best they could for the transport to the final hospital. There's so many people to thank in this whole thing that we're just extremely blessed. And I've said it 100 times, for a community of 9,500 to have a hospital like we have, we are so blessed. And police and fire are two of my passions that I feel those are two very big parts of when you talk quality of life. I don't. If somebody says, what does quality of life mean to you? I don't immediately think of a large box store where I can buy a lawn chair. Mm-hmm. I think of our police and fire. They protect us and they provide a service when we need it with an ambulance or first responders. We are just so blessed, and City Manager Fagenshoe did a great job of finding the money to be able to bring on more staff as far as police officers and as far as firefighters. We had so many back-to-back overlapping calls. We do a lot of lift assist here locally, which we're not opposed to.
Yeah.
But when that call is out for a lift assist, and if I'm having a heart attack on the other side of town, it becomes very important to me is how come we can't get that second ambulance out?
Yeah.
And we've corrected that problem. Not that it won't ever happen again, but we've taken steps towards providing the very best service we can for the community.
The fire department, there's a lot of work going to be happening across the road from the fire department. That big new park project going to be happening right there. Firefighters are going to get a front row view of that. Parking is going to come into question, is my understanding, too. Have you guys done those surveys and all the number of parking spots for the firehouse and around that area?
We're working on that.
Yeah.
We're trying to shuffle some things around, and obviously we got this grant from the state of Illinois, which started this project, and
Yeah.
I'm super excited about it. It's the renderings of what this is going to look like is absolutely great.
Yeah, the stage is going to be fun.
Yeah, and we're going to have a gathering spot downtown, and that's the whole thing. Years ago we had a company come in here, the Roger Brooks study that he did, and one of the things they talked about in that study, which I don't know how many years ago it was, a long time. One of the things they talked about is you need a gathering spot.
Yeah.
And that's what this is going to be, a place where you can have, maybe we'll have some weeknight for a couple, 3 hours, have somebody local come in and do some music and just to gather and get people downtown.
At the John Bearrows band shell?
Karaoke at 7, right?
There you go. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. In the Know every Sunday morning. Sir, you take care. You have a great week.
Thank you, and you too. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this week's In the Know. The program returns next week at this time with another great conversation with someone from your community.